Aloha! In this segment of the Buyer's Agency informational videos, I want to cover a couple topics about purchasing land that are important to go over with your agent, things that I would go over with you if you want to work with me. And I should really shoot this out in the red mud, but to save us from the sound of roosters and tractors and so on, we're going to be in front of one of the most beautiful land spots on the island, but it's really just a painting. Anyway. What I want to touch on are a couple topics that you need to go into depth on, because when you're purchasing land here on Kauai, ironically, it just came to me a little while ago, the crux of it is something that taps into some of my personal philosophies. It's an area where past, present, and future all connect, because there is a lot of history on Kauai that impacts land developments, including the passing of the various different laws that affect where we are today, and there's some things going on today that will affect or could affect the values tomorrow. So, as a buyer, especially if you don't live here, you got to make sure that these things are covered fully for you. And don't trust us, your real estate agents. I'm going to say that up front. I do my best to do due diligence for my clients, but a lot of times what I do is I show them I need to be the source of the source for you. I'll show you where I'll go with you to the planning department, tell you what I know, what questions to ask. And, a lot of times, literally, to use dirt as an analogy, as you turn over new rocks, different things pop up. So, what I try to approach it is to have an inquisitive mind. I appreciate that from my clients, and I do my best to help point out the rocks that we need to turn over, help lift them for you, and let's explore these issues together. Okay. You're probably wondering, what the heck are you talking about? Well, if you haven't heard of CPRs, this is something that you really need to know, and it isn't clear when you're looking on the internet. When you're looking at listings on the multiple listing service, there is a major difference between a listing that says LN for land and LC, because that's a land condo. That means it was divided using condominium property regime, or a CPR. So that alone is enough to try and really understand, and we'll go into more information on the CPR video. But what I want to talk to that's relevant to that is particularly tied to the sunset of the right to build an additional dwelling unit on an agriculturally zoned piece of land under 4 acres that expired in 2006. So the additional dwelling unit permit had to be filed then. That's pretty simple to do, so most people met that deadline. However, what's hitting this year is the house permits for the additional dwelling unit need to be, I'm not clear if they have to be fully approved or not, but they definitely have to be in planning before the end of the year. And to be safest, I would say get them in before, so that if they reject them, you can have it. I don't want anybody caught in any kind of catch-22 where they brought it down December 28th, but it's missing this, and they went to the architect, and it came back on January 2nd, and they said, no, you can't build. Why am I worried about that? Well, what happens is, to use a simple example, we've got a 1 acre piece of agriculturally zoned land with the rights to build 1 house, a guest house, and an additional dwelling unit. Someone, the owner, CPR'd it into 2 half-acre pieces and wrote up in the documents that this Unit 1, we'll call it, has the right to build the main residence, or they call it the primary residence, and the guest house. And Unit 2, which is half an acre, has the rights to build the additional dwelling unit. Well, if that land isn't sold, and if the owner doesn't develop it before the end of this year, the right to build that second full house, the additional dwelling unit, goes away, and that's it, unless there's some change in the law. But that's kind of like saying, let's hope the wind changes from east to west, like on Mary Poppins or something. I can't work with what might happen. I have to tell you what is now law and how that may impact you, and that's all we can do when we're buying and negotiating. If someone tries to tell you different, I would say don't listen, because we can't, who knows what the county may or may not do. They may, I've heard people say, oh, they're going to extend it, they're going to change this. Reality is we don't know. What exists today is very clear. That right goes away at the end of this year. So that can bring some change into the market, depending on what you're looking for. That can mean that it's maybe a good time to negotiate now. It could mean that maybe it's a good time to wait and negotiate in January of next year, and we can talk about that separately. But it's really critical that you look, because it's apples and oranges when you're looking. Like, for instance, the people that I was showing property to yesterday were looking under $300,000 on the North Shore, and then I showed them some things on the east side because you get much more for your money, I would say, on the east side in that range. But it's vastly different when you look at a residentially zoned, or in this case we looked at an agriculturally zoned lot that's only 9,000 square feet and is priced the same as half an acre or 3/4 of an acre that's part of a CPR unit. So there are things to look into with the CPR, but the positive is sometimes you get a better view, more land for the same price. I don't want to scare you away from buying a CPR. It just means that there's some things to look into in terms of the CPR documents, the zoning, what your neighbors have built out, et cetera. And I'll go over all of that with you personally if you'd like. So that's a little bit about the ADU law. That's one law that I wanted to mention that has a past, present, and future, and the CPR law, because the CPR is not expiring, but the benefit of it is expiring as the ADU permit rights expire. So on the agriculturally zoned land, that is. Residential parcels, there is no sunset of the ADU right to build. So if it's a residentially zoned piece of land and it qualifies for additional dwelling unit, and there's a one-page permit, if the seller is telling you it has an ADU, you should be able to get that in writing, because it is very easy to get as a seller. And it's not like getting a building permit. You know, I've done it for sellers, literally walking from department to department. Very little red tape to go through. It's pretty straightforward. Either qualifies or it doesn't. So if it's presented as a residentially zoned parcel with a right to build an ADU, please ask for that ADU permit. Shouldn't be a problem. It's the agriculturally zoned that you need to be aware of, and a lot of times that's where my buyers are looking, because it's a little more attractive. It had to be up in the country and have a little bit more of that Hawaiiana feel than to be in town or subdivision. You might feel like I did. I moved here from San Francisco, and I didn't come from the city to live in a crowded area, so I kind of wanted to be up country in a way, and I didn't mind the roosters and the country feeling, because I was really longing for that. I had enough of gunshots and cars and sirens and all of that, so I'd rather hear roosters in the middle of the night any day. But sorry, let me backtrack here to what's important to you, not my flashbacks. So with the land purchases, you want to look at, again, you need to make sure that your buyer's agent digs into the CPR documents, how it's written, what the rights to build are, and I want to flag just another item with that. I'm not going to go into too much detail because I want to keep this video short, but just know that CPRs, although approved by the county, are not recognized by the county other than a private agreement among owners. Briefly, what that means is if they only go by the original parcel. So if the original parcel, like that 1 acre, qualifies for 2 homes and a guest house, how that's divided among the owners, they're not going to get in the middle of it. So if the first owner of Unit 1 built everything on their half, and the poor person who bought the other house says, well, what about my right to build a house? The county's not going to get involved in that. And I have personally seen some conflicts and some things happen like that. So it's just something, a point of information that you need to know when you're looking into CPR. It's important to check into what has been built out, if there are any violations on your neighbor's property, because if your neighbor built an illegal shed, for instance, and you go to pull building permits, the county won't approve them because that unpermitted work is on the original parcel. And you thought that it was going to be straightforward. This is the adventure of buying land on Kauai. Not to scare you, but I do want to, raise some issues to let you know how important it is to have a dedicated buyer's agent representing you. I would suggest find someone you're comfortable with, that you feel is really looking out for your best interest, and sign a buyer's agreement with them so that you are their client, not just a customer. And ask tough questions. Don't be afraid to ask. I've had clients educate me because they had questions based on where they were coming from that I hadn't thought about asking, and we explored and found the answers together. There's no shame in asking any question, and the way I work with my buyers is I'll tell you everything I know, and sometimes we'll learn something together as well. So if you have any questions that I can help you with, feel free to contact me. Otherwise, look forward to seeing you on the next video. Aloha!